The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
My question is to the Minister of Education. Does she stand by her statement made during the first reading of the Education Amendment Bill number 2 that, quote, it's not intended, end quote, that the bill remove the requirement for carers at limited attendance centres to have police checks?
The Honourable Tolley.
Now, Mr Speaker, yes. However, I'm advised that it's not appropriate for these requirements to be in the Education Act, as these are not providers of early childhood education, but simply creche or babysitting services in places like gyms and malls, where parents choose to leave their children for an hour or two.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Is she suggesting that individual parents should ask the carers if they are paedophiles? And does she seriously think they will get honest answers?
The Honourable Tolley.
Mr Speaker, no.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Something.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Whose responsibility then is it to ensure that these carers are not convicted sex offenders?
The Honourable Tolley.
Mr Speaker, there are a number of legislative requirements that will continue to apply to this type of short-term child minding. There is also an onus on the creche providers via contractual obligations to parents to ensure that they provide an environment suitable for the safety and well-being of children in their care.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Which parents sign a contractual obligation with a gym when they drop their kids off for 1 hour?
The Honourable Tolley.
It's my understanding they don't have to sign anything.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Supplementary question. Will she take responsibility to the parents for the first case of someone who was a convicted sex offender being allowed to be a carer as a result of the changes that she has made in the Education Amendment Bill number 2?
The Honourable Tolley.
Mr Speaker, I find the inference in that question absolutely offensive. This is making a difference. This is making a difference between an early childhood education centre and a creche or a babysitting service that's in a gym or in a shopping centre where a parent leaves their child for a small period of time. Often they have sight of that child constantly, and the parent has the responsibility to ensure that they are leaving their children, and this government trusts parents to make those decisions in a safe environment.
Supplementary.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Question. Does the Minister not understand that she's not trusting parents, but she's trusting sex offenders because they will no longer have to have police clearances because of the changes she is making?
The Honourable Tolley.
Mr Speaker, I seek your help. I find that question absolutely offensive. I am not trusting sex offenders.
Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, it's been well established and accepted by the Minister that she is removing the protection that stops sex offenders working as carers in gymnasia and shoppers' creches. Mr Speaker, she is saying that we should trust the parents, when in fact what she's saying is that we should trust the sex offenders.
Order. Order, please. That is not actually a point of order. I listened to the member because I know the member is not satisfied with the Minister's answer, and I was listening to try and assess the basis of the dissatisfaction. And I think the question contained an element of accusation that the Minister found objectionable. If it were possible to frame questions that forgive me now, time has passed, I'm not sure whether it was this one that started, does the Minister not understand, or forgive me if it wasn't the way this one started. But usually that kind of construction for a question is actually intended to simply make a statement, and there have been speakers previously who have just ruled out that kind of question. But given the way the Minister has responded to the question, I think rather than ask the Minister to answer that further, the member does, I think, have more supplementary questions available. I think framing a question that is asking rather than making a statement that the Minister finds offensive would be a better way to proceed. The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Point of order. I want to make it clear, are you ruling my supplementary out on the point of order of the Minister, or are you asking me to rephrase my supplementary?
No, what I'm doing is I'm ruling that I'm not going to ask the Minister to answer it any further. Her answer was that she found it offensive. And that can...
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
I thought the Minister was answering, but I hadn't... order. I did not call the Minister to a point of order. I called her to answer the question. And let me come back to the Minister and ask, did the Minister take a point of order or did she answer the question? The Minister indicates to me she answered the question. Order. Order. Now, the member's been around this House for a while and she will not interject while a point of order is being dealt with. Now, the member asked this question. If I remember the question correctly, it went along the lines, does the Minister not understand something? And the Minister objected to that and said she found the question offensive. And under the circumstances, I'm accepting that as a reasonable answer. And when I'm coming back to the member and saying that the subject area is certainly not out of order. As I understand the question, it appears there might have been or it's intended that there's some amendment to the Education Amendment Act, there's an Education Amendment Bill number 2 that does something, and the subject matter is perfectly legitimate area to question a minister on. But the questions should not be of that nature, especially with this kind of issue. Questions by and large that say, does the minister not understand something or are simply really not proper questions at all. They're simply a means to make a statement. The Minister found that statement offensive, and that's why I'm supporting the Minister in her answer. But the member has further supplementary questions to pursue the fundamental issue. The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Does the Minister believe that it is desirable for a paedophile to be employed to care for children in a limited attendance centre? And if not, why has she removed the primary protection against that happening?
The Honourable Tolley.
Mr. Speaker, of course I do not support that. However, as I've said before, the Education Act is not the appropriate place for these types of regulations because these are not providers of early childhood education. Now, I note that the member has been looking at other jurisdictions, and I would always be very happy to discuss how other countries have addressed this issue. But in the meantime, this is not an issue for the Education Act because they are not providing early childhood education.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Why then, if it's not appropriate for it to be in the Education Act, did she not promote an amendment to another act where she thinks it's more appropriate when she removed the protection of young children from paedophiles in gymnasia and shopping centres?
The Honourable Tolley.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, we are dealing with an Education Amendment Act, and so I am making changes. And one of the difficulties was that the previous government over-regulated to such an extent that we had to come in and change. These were creches, and in fact I visited one with the Minister of Māori Affairs, a room no bigger than an average living room with a small section in the corner in full view of the parent where their child was minded while they were doing exercise. And the previous government put in regulations that required a qualified teacher, an education plan and a whole raft of requirements that were way over the top for a couple of hours childminding.
The point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, it was a very long answer, Mr. Speaker, but it didn't go to...
Order.
It didn't go to the question about which was, why did the Minister not promote an amendment to another act as she opened up the gap to paedophiles?
Order. I heard the question and that last comment shouldn't have been made under a point of order. I heard the question very clearly and I listened very carefully to the Minister's answer.